Hi, in this video I want to talk about some techniques to help with the symptoms of complex trauma. So I've been working on a webinar called Healing to Wellness Journey for Complex Trauma Recovery, and I basically use a lot of NLP type methods. And in this video I want to tell you about this book I found for free on the internet, and it's called the Community Resiliency Model. And they use 6 techniques that are really good ways of explaining some of the NLP techniques. They're just using different words and they explain it really good. So I think this is like a good primer for how to use these techniques to help with emotional flashbacks and emotional body sensations that go on when triggered or upset. So this community resiliency model, it's a workbook. You can search it on Google. You can find it. This is a PDF, and it explains the nervous system and PTSD. Really good. But I wanted to kind of go over these 6 methods. So before I dive into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the symptoms or the ways that complex trauma and emotional flashbacks show up in our lives. We might have emotional flashbacks, we might have behavioral, compulsive type things, spiritual, feeling hopeless or helpless, negative thinking, nightmares, anxiety. Physically, you could feel lump in your throat, stomach upset, tight muscles, etc. So trauma and stress, common reactions. Here's a good little diagram here. And what I kind of like too about, see these circles? This is another good way to talk about NLP and how we have this like cluster of emotions, or a cluster. These things can come in like clusters. We could get triggered. We could have the same emotion, thinking, and behavior, all wrapped up into one. So learning how to go within and deal with these body sensations and kind of even separating these out and sorting them helps to integrate and brings a lot of emotional relief, and it helps to emotionally regulate and self-soothe and everything else by using these methods when these things are triggered, are coming up. So I wanted to mention emotional flashbacks are usually an emotional response that is out of proportion to whatever's going on. And, a lot of times we don't know what to do when we're stuck in that. So these methods are going to sort of help that, what to do when you have this, out of proportional emotional response or get triggered. So just so you know, we're talking about body sensations. It's also called somatic markers. And basically in the research, when they look at these things, they call it a somatic, or soma is another word for body, markers. And those are sensations we feel in the body that are generated by the amygdala when we get upset or triggered. And body sensations can be, teeth grinding, feeling a flushing, pressure in your chest. You might find yourself with sweaty palms or clenching your fists or just sweating in general. Your heart rate or breathing might be increased. So that's what we're talking about. When upset, to pay attention to these sensations and use the methods with them. So here it's talking about how to describe these sensations, because the art of tracking them is being able to describe them. And you get used to it the more you do it. So you might feel this pressure in your chest and it feels like it's pulsating or empty or tight or whatever it feels for you. Here's some good examples of sensation words. Okay. And with trauma, like down here, they're talking about in trauma or stress, you have like constricted breath. And when you're in your resiliency zone, or basically like in your wellness, when you're feeling normal for you, you have more of a deeper breath, a regular heartbeat, you feel grounded and calm. And then during a release, when we release the stress is sort of like holding in, and release is when it's kind of been let go, like having a good cry or shaking or burping, yawning. You might feel tingly after releasing. Sometimes that's why exercise helps take the edge off somewhat, because we got to release this pent up tension, in the body. Okay, so going back over here now, tracking is, first of all, you have to realize when you're upset or triggered and get into the habit of noticing what body sensations you're having. Notice where you feel it in your body. And tracking simply means you're going to start describing it. So this forces your attention into yourself and into your body to describe the pressure, the tingling, the weight, the colors, how big it is, what shape it is, things like that, which is, as far as I know, comes from NLP when we describe the representational systems, sight, sound, weight, feel, and, up from all the five senses, basically. So what does it sound like, look like, feel like, how heavy, the weight, the temperature, things like that. And just the practice of doing that really does help calm the body down, because you're starting to attend to this inner somatic marker and emotional flashback going on. Now, two, resourcing and intensifying your resources. Resourcing is when you sort of do the opposite. Instead of tracking your upset, you want to call up resources like peacefulness or love or strength or a positive memory, and think about, how that makes you feel. And then track that by describing the body sensation you feel, the differences in your body. And one of the techniques they talk about is kind of doing this back and forth, where you track your upset, then you go to a resource and track that. And this back and forth kind of helps loosen it up and process it to where you tend to calm down and get some emotional relief. And as you practice this over time, like I like to practice 5 to 10, 15 minutes a day, every day for 90 days, you'll notice that you get upsets less and less. They're less intense. They last, they're shorter. So this is a really good practice. It's kind of like a mindfulness somatic somatic mindfulness or somatic experiencing. So grounding is just basically being in the here and now by feeling, your butt in the chair or your feet on the ground, or if you're laying in the bed, just feeling all the places on your body that have contact with the surface that is holding you. So you just feeling grounded and centered is another method. So you could be tracking your upset, calling up your resources, feeling grounded in the here and now, and that will really help you while you're going through an emotional flashback. Now, gestures and spontaneous movements, this is where they just talk about noticing how you express yourself with gestures, and pay attention to either yourself or other people when you're calm, happy, feeling secure and safe. What kind of gestures? And use those gestures on purpose, intentionally, a little slower than normal, and that's what helps kind of trigger the positive states and body sensations and resources too. We got to keep strengthening them and anchoring them by remembering them. So when you do gestures, that kind of calls them up. That's why if you smile long enough, you tend to start to feel a little bit more happy. So the body, the posture, gestures, tune into what people are acting like with their energy when they feel calm or confident, and just copy those, and that'll help you. Now, 5, this amping down and ramping up and help now, is basically just talking more about your resources and describing them more, shifting your attention to them more, while you do track your upset, but not to stay stuck in the upset, continue to move into the resources and ramp it up by just more descriptive stuff so that you tune into it and you start to feel it a little bit more. So you could take a resource and describe it in like 5 different ways and write that down. And then every time you think of that resource, you're calling up all these positive thoughts, memories, body sensations, etc. Shift and stay. That's where you find yourself in an upset. You might be tracking it, and then you shift over to your resources and you intentionally stay there. And every time you find your mind like drifting back to your upset, you bring it back to the resource and stay there. And I like to do that by also future pacing a little. Like, now that I'm in my resource, what's the first thing I need to do? And whatever comes to mind is something that I want to take action on now or in the near future. And so just asking yourself, like, what do I need to do right now? What's the best action I can take right now? And usually your body and your mind have this wisdom that kind of knows what it wants. So just by asking it, just pause and listen and see what comes up. And then do what it says to do. So that you're moving into and staying into more of your resources and your resiliency, and not getting sucked back down into the downward spiral, of the PTSD type depression that can happen when we get just overwhelmed by those sensations and kind of stuck in them. So, again, you can get this PDF online and read about each one of these methods and practice them. It's a little workbook that'll help you, write a few things down so you really get it. And then if you want to use my inner peace process, that's a little method I use that does incorporate most of these methods here. I just didn't call them, these particular terms. But I have a new blog that's called NLP for PTSD at Blogspot. When I Google's little free blogs, so you can see the website right here, right? And here, you got to scroll down a little, and you see there's 3 tabs. So the inner peace process tab, that's where I created a bunch of videos to do a session. Give yourself a session with this little process, this somatic experiencing NLP mindfulness method to heal upsets. And then there's 6 videos of me explaining how it works or why it works with complex trauma and with adult children of alcoholics and narcissist type issues that are really tough issues to deal with, right? So anyway, that's that. So just those 2 things alone can really help, like knowing what methods, how to use them, and then having a video of somebody kind of walking you through a little process to kind of help you just get back into empowerment and resiliency and so forth. So this is JP Bailey. I'm going to put my this video, it'll be right here as soon as I upload it. And I've got a lot of stuff on NLP and using it for complex trauma issues. And if you don't know who I am, I'm the author of Emotional Freedom Techniques for Codependency Recovery. I wrote that almost 10 years ago now. And these days I'm doing more NLP stuff, which is this somatic mindfulness technique that really does powerful healing on these issues. And you just sort of have to give it a try. Take good care. Thanks for listening.